Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video of mine, where I talk about more ideas that I have for the Destiny concept of mine. Today, I'm going to be going a little bit more in depth on my limited event idea and a few more ideas that I have in mind. Getting into the first topic, limited events or seasonal events like Solstice, Dawning, Festival of the Lost, and much more should be active in the game at all time. Now what I mean by this? Well, first things first, players shouldn't easily be available to access any of the events at any time. The players should find their way around them. There would be a system where every reset, a new event will be activated that players have to find, and the community won't be told where the event is. The steps to finding these events goes as follows. First, they have to load in on Tuesday reset. Then they would go to a specific or an existing NPC and buy a key, which for example could be called a key to a special place. This key then will unlock a portal somewhere in the star chart, and there would be many locations for a portal to spawn. The community then would have to go find the portals by themselves. No hints would be given. They just have to go around and find the place to unlock the portal. Now why add this? Well, there'll be less FOMO within the game. When an event comes around into rotation, it's around for a limited time and it's gone, which is perfectly fine. It's called a seasonal event for a reason. However, the major difference between the real event and the portal event is that the real event would give us the usual rewards, but at an increased drop rate, and if there's any new upcoming weapon or armor for that event, it would not be included in the portal event until the real one has ended, and then it would be added to that pool of loot. There's also the factor that every single time the same event comes around, either the old armor set has been removed from the loot pool or the weapon has been, but in most cases the armor has been. And if we're making this the Destiny game where it includes everything from both games without removing anything, like in the case of armor, this would be a good alternative. Though I would imagine not many would agree with this and would rather have the limited event have the old armor and weapons be naturally added back into the loot pool to be obtained whenever that event comes around, making this a portal idea futile. Although we can still make use of the portal idea for a completely different activity. It could be a mini dungeon level activity that only a solo player could go and do. It would feature two different difficulties to it, a normal version and a GM version, which to unlock, a player has to do the base version first. This would really test the player and their skills. It would also allow them to obtain unique loot for a specific portal. And I keep repeating the idea that there should be unique gear and loot. However, if Bungie were to convert any of the paid Eververse ornaments into an armor set, which I highly doubt they would, some could be implemented into this new activity. Or if there were some cool looking world loot armor or weapons, they could be utilized into that area, further cutting down on the costs on making the new activity and making the world loot table smaller. This next entry is not specifically an original idea of mine, however, it's something that I've seen and been talked about for ages, and that is ship combat. I think that it's a huge missed opportunity for Bungie to not make a ship combat possible within the game. It would not only fit better into the story wise, so we can see ship combat happen, but it would add a whole new game mode into the game. Having new places to explore and get a feel of, fighting in the orbit of Earth or of Saturn right next to Oryx's Dreadnought. This place also could feature its own unique set of core playlists and activities. There could also be PvP added to it. There could also be a hybrid of ship and actual character mission too, where half of the mission requires the player to fight off either waves of enemies in their ship and then go to an enemy ship and infiltrate it, then get out and survive against hordes of enemies again. There's endless potential for this game mode. There could be once again be unique weapons and armor just for the world drop alone. Imagine if there's any raids or dungeons within this activity type. And going back to an old idea of mine from the previous video, if we had our own guardian apartment, we would be able to see our ship from a different apartment parked somewhere. Or the ship could be used as a little space home while we're in orbit, have our own personal vault and other sorts. I hate to compare this, but it would be similar to what Warframe does, where we could have our own quarters within the ship. Moving to the next section, that is Prismatic. This is another idea that isn't exactly fully original of mine, but takes inspiration from Warframe. Since Prismatic allows us to combine many aspects of subclasses, like being able to have a Strand Super with an Arc Melee, there should be some kind of interaction between each subclass. What I mean by this is that in Warframe, when you combine two different element mods, they make a sub-element. We could do the same here in Destiny, where if you threw a solar grenade and then activated their stasis melee, it would create a new sub-element just for that interaction. These new sub-elements don't have to become the main new elements for the game and other aspects or weapons in the game, it would just be a small sub-interaction. However, it does seem a bit too much to implement for just only subclass interaction, and of course it would be better to be implemented into the entire game, but that again would take too much work, so we can come up with a new idea instead, where it could be a simpler interaction between each element. For example, I could just throw an arc grenade and then do a strand melee, which then would cause a small interaction of strand becoming like a lightning tethering nearby enemies, since arc and strand function somewhat similar but not too similar. Or if solar and stasis were combined, it would cause some kind of explosion to occur. This next section continues on my idea of bringing back old content and activities from the DCV, or the Destiny Content Vault. This being adventures, and sure they did come back in the final shape, however they were only in the Pale Heart, and don't exactly do what I'm going to be talking about. As I said before, all old adventures should be brought back, but besides that, they should also function a bit like Lost Sectors in terms of being able to change the difficulties. There should be two different difficulties, a base version and a GM version. To unlock the GM version, players would have to play through the base one, then it would be unlocked. The difference between the two difficulties is that the base version would include only world loot drops. However, in the GM version, it would drop specific armor sets and weapons for them, and only one adventure in each patrol, planet, or region would drop an exotic armor for each class and a weapon. So the pool would consist of specific armor and weapons to each adventure, and one single one would contain specific armor and weapon, plus 4 exotic items, 3 pieces of gear for each class, and 1 weapon. This activity would feature the same story beats and lore. In the base version, it would feature the original lore that came with the adventure activity, while in the GM version, it would have an exclusive lore to the mission that would further depthen on Destiny's lore. Not too long ago, Bungie changed and removed some of the difficulty names within Destiny. The original lineup was Normal, Adept, Hero, Legend, Master, and GM. Now that has changed. Now it goes Normal, Advanced, Expert, Master, and GM. The major changes are the Adept difficulty being removed, Hero becoming Advanced, and Legend becoming Expert, which is kind of pointless in my opinion. However, if we wanted to implement all these difficulties into the game for fun, it wouldn't be too hard, but it would be a bit redundant too. However, it's better to have more difficulties to really fine-tune at what level you're at and how much you want to challenge yourself to get better and higher amount of loot. The new order would be Normal, Adept, Hero, Advanced, Legend, Expert, Master, and GM, where each difficulty would slowly but incrementally increase the difficulty in amount of loot earned. The major difference players would see is going from Normal to somewhere between Advanced and Legend, and the final two, Master and Grandmaster. Like I said, it does complicate some things, but if enough fine tweaking is done, it can be pretty balanced. There would also be a difficulty level for everyone. There could be specific challenges for each one, or special modifiers, or anything else that makes them stand out from one another. Maybe if we had strike-specific loot, the higher ones would give us a higher guarantee of getting it, while the first two you wouldn't be able to get it at all, and the middle ones you would have a small percentage. Something to make them stand out from one another, or just like I said, have a wide range of difficulties, which isn't an uncommon thing. Many MMOs feature a large range of difficulties. It also gives a kind of artificial difficult scaling to feel to the game, or the fact that you progress through the game so much that throughout your time it challenges you at any level you're at. Now if we're going back to an idea of mine where power level and character level keep getting increased as each DLC is added into the Destiny game, then the normal difficulty would feature a very low power level depending on activity, and it would be at around 0 to 100, while with each increase in difficulty, it would properly scale with where players would be at the time, and where Bungie thinks it would be a good place where players could comfortably challenge themselves in higher difficulties. So for example, if we were currently in the House of Wolves DLC, the max difficulty we could comfortably be able to do is Adept or Hero, and of course GMs and any other higher level activity would be available, but GMs would be the max power level and character level of 2100 and level 1200, so it'd be very challenging and near impossible on early game and middle game, though this adds real progression within the game and gives incentive to keep wanting to play the game. A quick little entry about two things that I want to talk about, that being proximity chat and scrap content from Destiny 1 and Destiny 2. Starting with proximity chat, it wouldn't be too hard to implement since we already have voice chat. Although it isn't the greatest, we could improve upon it, and being able to communicate to people via the game would solve problems like people not having Discord or any other way of communicating to others. Sure, it would need to be heavily regulated because some people would abuse it and say inappropriate words, but it would be very fun nevertheless. Imagine going to patrol and coming past someone else and then talking to them about being able to do random activities. Now, scrapped content. Bungie has a lot of scrap content for both D1 and D2, and while for making this new Destiny game where it includes all things imaginable from both games, then having any sort of cut content from both games can finally be added into this game. This not only allows for any holes in the story to be patched up, but it also allows the devs to add everything they wanted into each game, to make sure they put in everything they had in mind without getting held back, to make sure we have all the explorable maps and features, activities, armor and weapons and much more to be within this one single The Destiny game. Now the final entry of this video, and that is something that many can agree with that we should have more of, and that is more of 12-man activities, because in my honest opinion, I really loved the chaotic element of the excursion mission. Whether it was the normal version or the GM version, it was great. Besides the whole story plot behind it, the idea of a 12-player mission is just great. Having that many players and a lot of activity happening at once was just so incredible. This only further alludes to my idea of wanting a 12-player raid, but that is of course a lot harder to make and manage since getting a full team for a normal raid at times is hard enough. However, basic missions like these should exist. There should be more of them. This once again connects the community more and makes a greater impact on what we're doing. There should be a mix of very special missions like the excursion, but there should also feature basic ones. Maybe there could be a patrol or world events that happen in each patrol or destination in our star chart, which requires 12 people to participate in. It could be a mega public event that people could be a part of. And this once again goes to another old idea of mine from a previous video. If patrol spaces get reworked and hopefully allow for larger exploration of the place, allowing for more players to be in the patrol space, and once again allowing for more activities such as this one. Like I said, it could be missions that could lead to large impact within the game, or it could be a random activity where players could just come together and just, play together, because, having wonderful loot together and having so much going on is far better than, 6 or less. Overall, these ideas are mostly additions to already existing things within the game, and some being original and inspired ideas. Although it's not a bad thing for what I said, Bungie's currently in hot water, and talking about these things isn't the best thing at the current given moment. We should address the current problems within the game and what's happening with Bungie, like fixing PvP, making it stable, making dedicated servers for the game, making better quality of life, bringing back old things, seeing how everyone at Bungie is doing, and much more. That's just the basics. I understand that they're trying their best to get their shit together, however the higher-ups aren't allowing them to fully express themselves and do what really the community wants. As much as I want to keep talking and adding new ideas to the game, it could be the end of the line, and best to say as much as I can while I can. I try to stay positive in times like these and support my favorite studio and game. There is too much negativity being thrown around, and it doesn't help the situation any better. I understand that there's a reason, at times for negativity. However, it's not the developer's fault, it's the people up top. It's best to find out who needs to take accountability, which we all know who it is, and well, things need to change for the better. That's about it. See ya.